In the dim light of the honeymoon suite, David Mercer sits on the edge of the king-sized bed, his head buried in his trembling hands. The silk sheets remain undisturbed beside him. His wedding tuxedo jacket lies discarded on a nearby chair, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. Outside, the sounds of the last wedding guests laughing and departing fade into the night. But inside this room that should have been filled with passion and new beginnings, there is only silence. A silence that screams louder than any argument could. Before I tell you what caused the scream, I want to remind you to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thanks. Across the room, his bride Elena stands by the window, her silhouette outlined by moonlight streaming through the curtains. Her wedding dress, a masterpiece of lace and silk, catches the light as she slowly turns toward him. "It happens to many men," she whispers, her voice neither accusatory nor comforting, simply observant, as if she were a scientist documenting an experiment. David can't bring himself to look at her. The shame burns through him like acid, eating away at the confidence he spent a lifetime building. He had one job tonight, one fundamental, primal task, and his body betrayed him in the most humiliating way possible. "I'm sorry," he manages, the words falling uselessly between them. Elena's footsteps are soft against the plush carpet as she approaches, stopping just short of touching him. "Don't be sorry," she says, reaching for her phone on the nightstand. "Be honest." In that moment, as she unlocks her screen with practiced precision, David has no idea that what she's about to do will not only shatter their wedding night, but unravel a web of secrets that will destroy two families, expose 3 lies, and reveal one devastating truth that no one, least of all himself, is prepared to face. What happens in the next 17 minutes will change everything. 3 months earlier, the engagement dinner at the Gardenia restaurant had been picture perfect. David Mercer, 32, successful investment banker with the right connections and the right smile, had stood to toast his beautiful fiancée. Elena Vasquez, 29, art curator with an eye for beauty and a talent for uncovering hidden value, had blushed appropriately as he declared his love. "To finding the one person who sees you, truly sees you, and loves you anyway," David had said, raising his champagne glass. The assembled friends and family had cheered, clinked glasses, captured the moment for social media. David's mother, Margaret, had dabbed at her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. "He's finally settling down," she whispered to Elena's father, Manuel. "I was beginning to worry." What Margaret didn't say, what she never said in public, was how relieved she was that David had chosen someone so perfect, someone who would understand the importance of appearances, someone who could help maintain the carefully constructed image the Mercer family had built over 3 generations. Elena's mother, Sophia, had watched the couple with a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "They look happy," she said to no one in particular, her fingers nervously twisting the pendant at her throat, a nervous habit she'd developed since her daughter had announced the engagement. Across the restaurant, at the bar, a man nursed a whiskey and watched the celebration with dark, unreadable eyes. No one noticed when he paid his bill and left, his hand clutching his phone too tightly. No one except Elena, who saw his reflection in the decorative mirror behind David's head. For just a moment, her smile faltered. "Are you okay?" David had asked, his hand covering hers on the table. "Perfect," Elena replied, recovering instantly. "Everything is absolutely perfect." Later that night, as David slept beside her, Elena stood on the balcony of his penthouse apartment, her phone illuminating her face in the darkness. The message she typed was brief. "It's done. He doesn't suspect anything." The reply came seconds later. "Good. Keep it that way until the wedding night." She deleted both messages before slipping back into bed beside her fiancé. David and Elena's courtship had been a whirlwind. 6 months from their first meeting at a charity auction to his proposal on the private beach of a 5-star resort in Bali. Both sets of friends have been surprised by the speed, but charmed by the obvious connection between them. "When you know, you know," David had told his best friend and business partner, James, during his bachelor party. James had raised an eyebrow. "And you're sure she's not just after the Mercer fortune? 6 months isn't long to really know someone." "She has her own money," David had replied, offended on Elena's behalf. Her family's gallery is one of the most respected in the city. She doesn't need my money. Money isn't the only thing people want, David, James had said, his tone softer, concerned. Sometimes they want access, connections, or just the thrill of conquest. David had dismissed these concerns with a laugh. You're just jealous because Melissa won't set a date. But later, alone in his apartment, David had found himself staring at Elena's side of the closet, at the designer clothes she'd gradually moved in, at the framed photographs of them together, at the expensive perfumes lined up on the vanity. Everything perfectly in place. Perhaps too perfect. For a brief moment, doubt had crept in. Elena had appeared in his life right after he'd made partner at the firm. Right after the Mercer name had appeared in the business section of the newspaper, following their biggest acquisition yet. Right after his mother had started hinting about the importance of starting a family. But then Elena had called, her voice warm with love and plans for their future, and the doubt had receded like the tide, leaving only anticipation in its wake. If he had looked deeper, if he had questioned the convenient timing, the way she knew exactly what to say to charm his mother, the mysterious phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered the room, perhaps the wedding night would have gone differently. But he hadn't. And now, as he sits on the edge of their honeymoon bed, unable to perform the most basic act of intimacy, those ignored warnings return with devastating clarity. Elena watches her husband of 8 hours as he struggles with his shame. Her expression betrays nothing of her thoughts. Not pity, not disappointment, not the calculating assessment that's actually running through her mind. Maybe we should just go to sleep, David suggests, unable to meet her eyes. It's been a long day. The stress, the alcohol. Maybe tomorrow. No, Elena interrupts, her voice suddenly firm. No more delays, David. No more excuses. Something in her tone makes him look up, really look at her for the first time since their embarrassing attempt at consummating their marriage. What he sees sends a chill through him. The woman standing before him, still in her wedding gown, is not the Elena he thought he knew. Her eyes are harder, her posture different, as if she's finally stopped playing a part she's grown tired of. What's going on? He asks, confusion and the first stirrings of fear replacing his embarrassment. Elena holds up her phone, screen facing him. I think it's time we were honest with each other, don't you? On the screen is a series of text messages. As David reads them, the blood drains from his face. They're messages between him and James from months ago, screenshots he never thought anyone would see. Where did you get those? He demands, standing now, his voice hoarse. Your password isn't that creative, David. Your mother's maiden name and your birth year? Really? Elena's smile is cold. But that's not the important question. The important question is why you told James you were only marrying me to secure the Watson account. David freezes. The Watson account, a billion-dollar portfolio that his firm had been chasing for years. The account owned by Elena's uncle, Vicente Watson, who had made it clear he preferred to work with family. That's not the whole story, David stammers. Yes, the connection helped, but I love you. You know I love you. Elena laughs, but the sound contains no humor. Love? Is that what you call it? When you were still sleeping with your secretary 3 months into our relationship, when you told James that marrying me was good business sense? She swipes to another screenshot, an intimate photo of David with his assistant, dated well after his relationship with Elena had begun. David feels sick, the room suddenly spinning around him. How long have you known? He manages. From the beginning, Elena replies calmly. Did you really think it was coincidence that I approached you at that auction? That I just happened to be interested in the same charity as your biggest potential client? She shakes her head, almost pitying. You weren't the only one with an agenda, David. The revelation hits him like a physical blow. What are you saying? Elena moves to the closet, pulling out a small recording device. I'm saying that tonight, your inability to perform was the least of your problems. Because while you were emptying your family's champagne cellar downstairs with your groomsmen, I was in your office, copying everything on your computer. She presses play, and David hears his own voice discussing the questionable methods his firm had used to acquire their last 3 major holdings. Methods that skirted the edge of legality. Methods that, if exposed, would not only ruin his career, but could lead to criminal charges. Why? He asks, his voice barely audible. If you knew what I was doing, what I am, why go through with the wedding? Elena's face hardens. Because a boyfriend can't testify against you. A wife can't be compelled to testify against her husband. The pieces click into place with horrifying clarity. You're working with the SEC. Not exactly, Elena says, reaching into the bodice of her wedding dress and pulling out a thin flash drive. I'm working with someone much more interested in personal vengeance than justice. She tosses him the drive. Your father ruined my father 20 years ago. Drove him to suicide with your family's business methods. Did you never wonder why my mother seems so tense around your parents? Why she wears that pendant constantly? David stares at her, uncomprehending. Your father? But your father is. Manuel is my stepfather. Elena cuts in. My real father was Christopher Vega, the man your father bankrupted to build the Mercer Tower downtown. The man who put a gun in his mouth when he couldn't provide for his family anymore. The name strikes David like lightning. Christopher Vega, a name mentioned in hushed tones around the Mercer dinner table. A cautionary tale of what happened to those who stood in their way. The pendant my mother wears contains the last photo of him. Elena continues, her voice trembling slightly. The first real emotion she's shown all night. For 20 years, we've waited for a chance to make your family pay. And you, David, with your arrogance and your wandering eyes and your convenient proposal, you gave us that chance. David sinks back onto the bed, his legs no longer able to support him. So tonight, my problem. Performance anxiety? Please. Elena's laugh is bitter. Check your champagne glass from the toast. I imagine there's still a residue of the drug I slipped you. Nothing dangerous, just enough to ensure you couldn't perform. I needed you vulnerable, confused, ashamed. So when this all comes out tomorrow, everyone will think you're having a breakdown. They'll believe you've lost control of your body, your company, your secrets. She moves toward the door, pulling a small overnight bag from behind the couch, packed and ready, as if she'd never intended to stay the night. By this time tomorrow, the SEC will have everything they need. The Watson account will be pulled. The Mercer reputation will be in tatters. She smiles, and in that smile, David sees 20 years of calculated patience. Your father took everything from us in a single day. It seems fitting to return the favor. David lunges for her, desperation overriding his shock, but his movements are sluggish, another effect of whatever she drugged him with. He stumbles, catching himself on the edge of the dresser. You won't get away with this, he gasps. No one will believe you. Elena pauses at the door. They already do. I've spent the last year building my case, gathering evidence, planting seeds of doubt with your investors. All while you thought I was just planning our perfect wedding. She glances at her watch. The information is set to automatically send to the authorities in 20 minutes unless I stop it. Which I won't. Wait, David pleads. Whatever my father did, that wasn't me. I didn't know. For a moment, something like regret flashes across Elena's features. Perhaps not initially, but you became him, David. Every underhanded deal, every betrayal, every person you stepped on to climb higher. You chose that path. She opens the door. Oh, and you might want to call your mother. In my research, I discovered something I don't think even you know. She pauses, savoring the moment. Ask her about the real reason your father left half his estate to his alma mater instead of to you. Ask her about Marianne Whitford and the child your father had with her. The final blow lands with devastating precision. David's world, already crumbling, shatters completely. Goodbye, David. I'd say it's been a pleasure, but we both know our entire relationship was built on lies. Elena steps into the hallway. The only difference is, my lies are about to set me free. Yours are about to become your prison. The door closes with a soft click, leaving David alone in the honeymoon suite, surrounded by the wreckage of everything he thought was real. 3 months later, Elena Vasquez Vega sits in a cafe in Madrid, watching the sunset paint the city gold. Her phone buzzes with a news alert. Mercer Investment Group files for bankruptcy amid fraud allegations. She opens the article to find David's once confident face now haggard with stress, photographed leaving a courthouse. The caption notes that he faces up to 20 years in prison for securities fraud and tax evasion. A man slides into the seat across from her, the same man who had watched her engagement dinner from the bar. He pushes a folder toward her. It's done, he says. Everything transferred to offshore accounts. Untraceable. The SEC will never connect you to any of it. Elena nods, satisfied. And my mother? Relocated to the villa in Portugal, as planned. Safe and comfortable. She allows herself a small smile, running her fingers over the pendant now hanging around her own neck. And the Mercer family? Margaret fled to Europe after the divorce filing. Apparently, David confronted her about his half-brother, just as you suggested. The family is effectively destroyed, financially, legally, personally. Elena closes her eyes briefly, feeling a complex mixture of emotions wash over her. Not happiness exactly. Not pure satisfaction. Something more complicated. A release of a burden carried for too long. My father can rest now, she murmurs. The man watches her carefully. Was it worth it? The year of planning, pretending to love him. Elena considers the question seriously. I didn't have to pretend entirely. In another world, perhaps. She trails off, then straightens her shoulders. But yes, it was worth it. Not for the vengeance itself, but for the truth. The Mercers built their empire on lies and the destruction of others. Now everyone knows that. And what now? He asks. We have the money, we have our freedom. Elena looks out at Madrid, a city where no one knows her name or her story. A clean slate. Now, she says, closing the folder, we live. She doesn't mention the small flash drive still in her possession, the one containing evidence of her partner's own financial misdeeds, his manipulation of her father's legacy for personal gain. That's a revelation for another day, perhaps. After all, as David Mercer learned too late, everyone has secrets, and Elena has become very, very good at uncovering them. As the waiter brings her espresso, she raises it in a silent toast to her father's memory, to choices made and consequences faced, to the thin line between justice and revenge that she has walked so carefully. Some might call what she did unthinkable. Elena calls it inevitable. And in the golden light of the Madrid sunset, with the weight of 20 years of waiting finally lifted from her shoulders, she allows herself, at last, to exhale. As Elena sips her espresso in Madrid, her phone buzzes again. This time, it's not a news alert but a message from an unknown number. The text contains only an address and a time. Calle Serrano 41, 8 p.m. Come alone. Her companion notices the change in her expression. Problem? I'm not sure, Elena admits, showing him the message. It could be nothing. Or it could be a trap, he counters, his voice hardening. The Mercers still have powerful friends. We should leave Madrid tonight. Elena stares at the message, a frown creasing her brow. No. If someone has tracked us here, running won't solve anything. She stands, gathering her belongings. I need to know who sent this. Elena, don't be foolish. Her partner hisses, grabbing her wrist. Everything we've worked for. She pulls away, her eyes flashing. I'll be careful, but I need to know if we're compromised. Before he can protest further, Elena walks out of the cafe into the warm Spanish evening, her mind racing. After everything she'd done to the Mercers, after all the careful planning, had she missed something? Someone. Calle Serrano is one of Madrid's most elegant shopping streets, lined with luxury boutiques and upscale restaurants. At precisely 8 p.m., Elena arrives, dressed inconspicuously in dark jeans and a simple blouse, her hair tucked under a cap. She's taken precautions, surveilling the address for the past hour, noting all possible escape routes, keeping her hand near the small canister of pepper spray in her pocket. The address belongs to a high-end restaurant, its exterior discreet, its clientele exclusive. Elena hesitates outside, scanning the faces visible through the windows. None are familiar. A text arrives, table in the back, under the name Vega. Her own name, her real family name, sends a chill down her spine. Few people knew that connection. Elena takes a deep breath and enters. The maitre d' escorts her to a secluded table where a woman sits alone, her back to the entrance. As Elena approaches, the woman turns, and the world seems to tilt beneath her feet. It's Margaret Mercer. David's mother looks different from the society matriarch Elena remembers. Gone are the perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes. This Margaret appears smaller somehow, dressed simply, her face bare of makeup, exposing the new lines of stress and grief. Please sit, Margaret says, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hand as she gestures to the chair opposite her. I'm not here to cause trouble. Elena remains standing, adrenaline coursing through her veins. How did you find me? Margaret's smile is thin. Money can still buy certain information, even if most of ours is gone. She sighs. Please, I only want to talk. 5 minutes of your time, then you'll never see me again. Against her better judgment, Elena sits, keeping one eye on the door. 5 minutes. Margaret nods, taking a sip of her water before speaking. First, I want you to know that I understand why you did it. She holds up a hand when Elena starts to interrupt. Not the details, perhaps, but I know who your father was. I know what happened to him. Then you know your husband destroyed him, Elena says coldly. Yes, Margaret admits, surprising Elena with her directness. William destroyed many people in his pursuit of success, including, eventually, himself. She looks down at her hands, where a wedding ring is noticeably absent. In our family. If you're looking for sympathy, I'm not. Margaret cuts in. I'm here because I have something that belongs to you. She reaches into her handbag and withdraws a small, worn leather journal. This was William's private diary. I found it after everything fell apart. There's an entry about your father. Elena stares at the journal, her throat suddenly tight. Why would you give this to me? Because you deserve to know the truth. Margaret pushes the journal across the table. William didn't target your father randomly. They knew each other, were friends, once at university. What happened between them was personal. Elena's fingers hover over the journal, not quite touching it. What are you saying? Read it, Margaret urges. Particularly the entries from April 1997. Then you'll understand. Elena slips the journal in her bag, suspicion still clouding her features. Why are you really here, Margaret? Revenge? Are you recording this conversation? The older woman shakes her head, a look of profound weariness settling over her face. My son is in prison. My husband is dead. He had a heart attack 2 weeks after your revelation about his second family. The company that bore our name for 3 generations is gone. She meets Elena's gaze directly. I have nothing left to lose, and no interest in revenge. It's a poison I've watched consume enough lives, including mine, Elena says quietly. Yes. Margaret's admission hangs between them. Was it worth it? Did destroying my son heal what happened to your father? The question strikes Elena with unexpected force. In Madrid, with the sun setting behind her, and the taste of victory still fresh, she had thought the answer was yes. But now, faced with the human wreckage of her vengeance, doubt creeps in. I don't know, she answers honestly. I thought it would. Margaret nods, as if expecting this answer. Vengeance rarely gives us what we think it will. She stands, leaving money for her untouched drink. One more thing. David asked me to give you a message. Elena tenses. What message? He said to tell you that he understands now, and that he's sorry, not for getting caught, but for becoming someone who deserved what you did. Margaret adjusts her scarf with dignity. Whether that means anything to you is not for me to say. With that, she walks past Elena, pausing briefly to rest a hand on her shoulder. The past cannot be undone, Elena, but the future is still unwritten. I hope you find peace in yours. Elena remains at the table long after Margaret is gone, the journal a heavy weight in her bag, the older woman's words echoing in her mind. Back in her hotel room, Elena locks the door and sits cross-legged on the bed, William Mercer's journal open before her. Her partner had been furious when she told him about the meeting, insisting they leave Spain immediately, but Elena had refused. She needed to know what the journal contained. As midnight approaches, she finds the entries from April 1997. What she reads makes her blood run cold. William Mercer and Christopher Vega, her father, had indeed been friends. More than friends. Business partners in a fledgling real estate venture. But William had discovered that Christopher was embezzling funds, small amounts at first, then larger sums. When confronted, Christopher had begged for time to return the money, claiming gambling debts and threats from loan sharks. William had agreed to give him 30 days. On day 29, he'd changed his mind and gone to the authorities. The journal entry from the day of her father's suicide is brief but devastating. Chris took the coward's way out today, left his wife and daughter with nothing but his debts. I should feel vindicated, but victory tastes hollow. Perhaps I could have handled things differently. But weakness in business is a luxury no one can afford. Elena closes the journal, her entire body numb with shock. The story she's carried her whole life, the narrative of her father as an innocent victim of the Mercer greed, crumbles around her. Her father had not been blameless. The vengeance she had spent years planning had been built on a partial truth at best, a lie at worst. The realization is like a physical pain, driving the breath from her lungs. What had she done? Destroyed a family, ruined David's life? All for justice for a man who had committed the very crime she despised in others? Her phone rings, her partner, checking in. She silences it, unable to speak to him now, unable to face what this means for everything they've done. The Madrid night spreads out beyond her window, the city lights blurring through her tears. Elena thinks of David sitting alone in that honeymoon suite, just as she sits alone now. Both of them victims of a story neither fully understood. She thinks of her mother, wearing that pendant with her father's photo, keeping his memory alive with a devotion that now seems both beautiful and tragic in its blindness. Had she known the truth? Or had she also been living in a carefully constructed fiction? Dawn finds Elena still awake, the journal open beside her, her laptop glowing with searches about the Mercer case. David's sentencing hearing is scheduled for next month. The evidence against him, evidence she provided, is overwhelming. Evidence that now feels tainted by her own family secrets. 1 week later, the U.S. Attorney's Office receives an anonymous package containing documents that cast doubt on key elements of the case against David Mercer. The documents suggest that some of the evidence may have been obtained illegally or manipulated. In Madrid, Elena's partner discovers her gone, the apartment emptied of her belongings. His calls go straight to voicemail. The offshore accounts they set up together have been untouched. In New York, David Mercer's attorney files a motion for dismissal based on the new evidence. And in a small town on the Portuguese coast, Elena sits beside her mother on a terrace overlooking the Atlantic. Between them on the table is William Mercer's journal. "You knew," Elena says softly. "All these years, you knew what Dad had done." Sofia Vasquez nods slowly, her fingers touching the pendant she still wears. "I knew he had made mistakes. Terrible ones. But I also knew he loved us and was trying to make things right. By stealing. By trying to save us from the men he owed money to." Sophia sighs. "Your father was not a saint, Elena. But neither was he the villain the Mercers made him out to be. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between." Elena watches the waves crash against the cliffs below. "I've done terrible things, Mama." "Yes," her mother acknowledges, taking her daughter's hand. "But you've also tried to make them right. That counts for something." Elena thinks of the evidence she sent to David's lawyer, anonymously but carefully. It won't exonerate him completely. He had committed real crimes, but it might reduce his sentence, give him a chance at a future. "What happens now?" she asks, more to herself than to her mother. Sophia squeezes her hand. "Now we live with our choices, just as your father did, just as the Mercers must. We carry on." Elena nods, feeling the weight of the past 20 years, of secrets and lies, of vengeance planned and executed, of truth finally faced, begin to shift, not disappearing, but perhaps becoming bearable. She removes her mother's pendant and opens it, looking at her father's face one last time before closing it again. Some treasures are too heavy to carry forever. "Yes," she agrees, returning the pendant to her mother. "We carry on." As the sun sets over the Portuguese coast, Elena thinks of David in his New York courtroom, of Margaret somewhere in Europe starting over, of her partner likely hunting for her even now. So many lives altered by choices made years ago, paths crossing and diverging, truth and deception intertwined so tightly that separating them may never be fully possible. The unthinkable had been done, by her father, by the Mercers, by Elena herself. Now came the harder part, living with the consequences, finding a way forward when the driving force of vengeance no longer lights the way. Elena takes a deep breath of salt air and allows herself, for the first time in 20 years, to think about tomorrow without the shadow of yesterday darkening it completely. It's not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps it's the beginning of something else, something like peace.